In this video, I'm going to talk to you about Title 26, which is the Internal Revenue Code. And I'm going to tell you why it's not a law. And I'm going to do this video in such a way where you can go to the websites that I go to and you can see the things that I see and you can see the information for yourself. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is understand what an enacting clause is. So what you can do is Google OLRC, or Office of the Law Revision Council. You Google this and you come to the web page uscode.house.gov. You'll want to search and browse. So click the search and browse button to the left and you'll see a search the United States Code bar where you can put search words into the box and then click search. And the words I want you to put in parentheses will be enacting clause. So if you do that and click search, fairly quickly you'll come up with a list of codes, the United States codes that have enacting clause written in them. Okay. Now, if you look down the list, you'll see that Title 26 is not there. Title 26 does not have an enacting clause. So what's an enacting clause and why is it important? We'll find out when we look for another website, and what you'll look for is you'll Google Republic Keepers, comma, authority of law. You should come to a web page that has off to the right the book page by page. And we're looking at Chapter 3, page 11, the enacting clause. The Constitution requires that laws passed as per the requirements of the Constitution have an enacting clause. And we know that Title 26 does not have one. So the government, when it wrote Title 26, wrote it outside of the Constitution. It has no authority or power. A word that they use for authority and power is called jurisdiction. Okay? So there is no jurisdiction, there's no authority or power in the Constitution to enact Title 26. That's why it doesn't have an enacting clause. So I'll just read a few sentences from this page and then I'll go to the next page and you'll get a good idea, and then on your own you can choose to read it in its entirety if you like. It's a fairly small book. It has large print and it's pretty explanatory. So the constitutional requirements of laws. Okay, constitutional requirements. All written constitutions prescribe the mode and process of making laws, and it does that. And I use the Heritage Foundation print of the Constitution because it is the most accurate that I've found so far. It has all the uppercase and lowercase per the original Constitution. Okay, so all written laws have to conform to the Constitution. But the constitutions also regulate the form and style in which laws are to be enacted to make them laws of the state. The three essential parts of every bill or law are title, enacting clause, and the body. Okay. The Constitution of North Carolina, for example, in 1876, Section 21, the style of the acts shall be, quote, the General Assembly of North Carolina do enact, end quote. The Constitution of the United States does not prescribe an enacting clause, but Congress has from the beginning used such a clause on all congressional laws. The style which has preceded all laws of Congress is, quote, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America, end quote. This, I think, was passed in one of the titles, one of the early titles, Title I, I think, in 1945 or thereabout. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the next page. I lost my place. I'll have to look again. Should only take me a second. Going through my files. Okay, so that was page 11. Let's go to page 12. Okay. The enacting clause is that portion of a statute which gives its jurisdictional identity and constitutional authenticity. The purpose of an enacting clause is to establish the act, to give it permanence, uniformity, and certainty, to afford evidence of its legislative statutory nature, and thus prevent inadvertence, possible mistake, and fraud. Okay, Title 26 does not have an enacting clause. A law cannot be regarded as coming from a constitutional authority if it does not have an enacting clause. The enacting clause provides evidence, okay? Remember that. The enacting clause provides evidence that the law which follows is of the proper legislative source or jurisdiction, okay? Hold that thought. We're going to go to Title I. So if you go back to the OLRC website and you search and browse and you have a list of titles, you next to Title I, you click the plus sign. Okay, and then you go down to Chapter 3 and click the plus sign. And then you go to section 204 and go across the page to view. Okay? And you're going to see something here where it says that in Title I. Okay, so let me find it. Should say something about prima facie evidence. Okay. Now it says positive law. So under A, it's the last sentence where it says provided that. Okay. So provided, however, that whenever titles of such code shall have been enacted into positive law, which means it has an enacting clause and it's been passed according to the dictates of the Constitution and within the jurisdiction that the Constitution allows, into positive law, the text thereof shall be legal evidence. Okay? So there is no legal evidence that Title 26 has been passed into law. Okay? It's not a law. And it says in all the courts of the United States. So it's evidence. If it has a positive law citation and an enacting clause, then there's legal evidence that the law has been passed and can be used as evidence in the courts as having been properly passed through the legislation and is in accordance with the Constitution. Without a positive law citation and without an enacting clause, it has not been passed into law, not properly. Okay? There's no evidence of it in any court of the United States. So what does that tell us? Title 26 is not a law. But not only that, In Ohio, there's something someone sent me where it said that the district courts were separated into two different district courts. They're all the same. They're still one, but they have two different offices. They have the constitutional courts of the district court, and then they have the non-constitutional courts of the district court. The constitutional courts are properly inactive, have a positive law citation, and have to be in accordance with the Constitution, and there's evidence of them having been made law. And then there's the other side, which are business contracts. Okay? These laws, without an enacting clause, without a positive law citation, are heard in the business courts. What they do is they generate revenue. And they're by contract, meaning they require an individual signature. So the constitutional courts, they hold court and they uphold the law. The business courts do business and administer the contracts. Okay? So let's look more at enacting clauses. So I'll read that last part again. The enacting clause provides evidence that the law which follows, meaning everything written after that, is of the proper legislative source or jurisdiction. Okay. The enacting clause is the section of a bill or structure which establishes the whole document as a law. This document, this Title 26, none of it is a law. And if they put the enacting clause away at the end, then it's only the things after it that's the law. The things, everything before it is not a law. Okay, so the enacting part of a statute is that which declares its enactment and identifies it as an act of legislation. Title 26 is not an act of legislation. Let's see. An enacting clause is necessary to show that the law in question comes from that duly assembled legislature. If any law is to have authority behind it, it must have an enacting clause preceding it. So the law comes after, the enacting clause precedes, as is required by the Constitution and fundamental law. So they know that they had no right and no authority, no jurisdiction and no power to pass Title 26 into law. And the reason why is because they use it outside of its constitutional confines, outside the federal lands, outside of its authority. And they lie to you and they tell you, well, you have to. Everybody has to pay their taxes. No, everybody doesn't have to pay their taxes because they're not my taxes to pay. And it's not a law. If you want to pass it on the federal lands. And they were never invited into our lands. They just came here and started pushing stuff on us. Politicians lie. That's what they do. Whenever you hear the word politician, right behind it say lies. Politician lies. Okay, historical usage of enacting clause. This is probably my favorite part. An enacting clause of some sort has long been used to preface a law, order, or command, so as declared or to make known to all concerned the source of the law, and thereby the authority for that law or order to exist. It is in effect a statement of the name of the authority that enacted the law affixed to the law. So we the people of the House and Senate, let's see, what does it actually say? It says, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States. That's what it's talking about. It's telling you, we of the Senate and House have this authority to do this thing. So whenever you have an enacting clause, you need to know who's telling you, because you need to know where they think they get the authority to tell you to do something is. It doesn't have one. Title 26 doesn't have one. So it's telling you we don't have the authority to do this just by not having the enacting clause there. So that's what that's saying. Okay, so the use of an enacting clause is one of the oldest concepts used in the process of issuing or enacting laws, edicts, or commands to identify the source and authority of the law. So it's the oldest thing that we know of in use to enact laws, is to tell you who I am so that you know what authority I have to tell you what to do. He issued, okay, so it was perhaps first used by God himself when he issued a command, directive, or law. Thus, when God gave Israel the 10 Commandments, it was made known to Israel the source and authority of these laws. Okay, I have to bring up the next page here. So we're on page 13. I am the Lord thy God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make for yourself any graven image. Okay, and so on, the 10 Commandments. Now, it doesn't matter if you're Christian or not. The point is that the enacting clause is the oldest form of stating the authority of the person who's about to tell you what to do. Okay? It states or identifies the source of the laws that follow. So anyone who's going to tell you what to do, they need to tell you why they think they can do it. This concept of an enacting authority was used by every kind of ruler when issuing their laws, decrees, or proclamations. So for some reason, our government thinks that it can get away with doing things without telling us where they think they get the right to do it, because Title 26 doesn't have an enacting clause, but it's telling you even God used one. So what do these people think that they have that God didn't have, that they don't have to use an enacting clause? King Cyrus of Persia, Artaxerxes, King of Kings, to Ezra the priest, I issue a decree that all those of the people of Israel do this thing. Okay, so all the kings, the Pope, God himself, they all used enacting clauses. And that told people, this is why you have to do this, because I'm the authority and I'm telling you, you have to do it. Title 26 doesn't do that. They just come and they tell you, you have to do it. And if you don't, you're going to go to prison. And they have put people in prison. But it's difficult for one person to fight a system. And they get you individually, because when you sign your forms to pay an income tax, you're signing them individually. So if you sign the forms and then you don't pay, then they're going to come after you. So another thing is that the federal government requires other things. If you're in the federal government, you use federal forms. If the federal government issues a form to be used, it has to have a federal form number. Every form goes through a process. So an agency who makes a form and wants it to be used by the feds, it has to go to the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. And it goes through a process before it can be approved for use. And then it's assigned a form number. And it'll tell you on this page, this web page, which is reginfo.gov, and you can just go there and search around and look for stuff. It's just an interesting site to look at. It'll tell you whether or not it complies with the ideas of federalism. So whether or not it's a contract for private purposes, or it's a contract for use by the feds for federal purposes. A lot of the forms that they use do not comply with the ideas of federalism. And the ideas of federalism are the ideas of the Constitution, the ideas that the founders put in the Constitution, that they wanted they wanted the government to follow. Okay, like protecting our liberty. They don't protect our liberty when they put out these non-positive laws and tell us we have to sign them. And then they have the full backing and power of the government that our forefathers instituted to protect us. So when you sign this federal form and you send it in, like the W-4, you don't have to, because if you don't work for the federal government, the federal form was never even for you to use. It was for use within the federal government by its officers and employees and its military contractors. It's military and military contractors. So when the IRS comes back and they say, well, you didn't pay us enough, or, you filed a fraudulent return, or you didn't sign the paper right, they never send you a federal form. They send you some kind of, just a piece of paper with some stuff written on it, and their symbol and their name up on the top. The Department of Treasury, Internal Revenue Service, this is our symbol, and they send it to you, and they tell you that they're going to steal your money from you. So it's basically, in the way I see it, it's a bait and switch. They send you a federal form. They tell you you have to fill it out, which is anti-liberty, because they're using force. They're telling you have to fill it out or you can't work. You have to fill it out, or you're going to go to jail. You have to fill it out, or we're going to confiscate all your home and your property. And then when they want to take more money from you, they switch. And they switch to a non-federal form. They switch to a form that doesn't have any kind of recognizable number on it at all. They just send it to you. And if you Google Unidroit, UNIDROIT, the laws of international commercial contracts, and you search through there and you look for contract forms, it says on there that there is no form that a contract has to adhere to. So they can send you things that don't even look like contracts. They can send you things that just look like a letter, or as the IRS people call it, a notice of deficiency. It doesn't even look like a form or an offer to contract. It just looks like a piece of paper, and it doesn't even have any federal form number on it, because it never went through the process and it was never authorized by the federal government for use. That means there's two sides to the IRS, even though it's part of it is a constitutionally enacted IRS. It's not Title 26, because way back in the day when, when the Constitution was written, the states were the ones that chose its military officers to serve on the federal lands. Now, these military officers were paid by the state, and then the federal government taxed their salaries, and they used that money to fortify and such. Okay, so the federal government has a right to tax the salaries of the federal officers, okay, and the civilians that worked on the military posts, because it was a salary that came under the federal government. So they could tax that. They could also tax the imposts and excise and such that's in the Constitution under Article 1, Section 8. So that was the tax that's constitutional. The rest of the taxes on the rest of us by the federal government are not constitutional. So they can't actually send us a federal form taking our money against our will. They can only send us a federal form where we offer to give them our money willfully. But when they take your money, they do it against your will. They can't do that. They're not authorized to do that. They're not authorized to force you to sign the form, but you do, and you send it in, and that authorizes them to start the contract, which then they say in their contract that they can use force because you agreed to all the terms of Title 26 when you sent in your W-4 and you did your 1040. So when people say that the IRS has no jurisdiction, they are correct over the free people of the state. They have no right, no authority, no power, no jurisdiction to tax us, the free people, the people at large. They're only supposed to tax themselves. How that works out, I don't know, but that's what the laws are as far as the way I understand them. So they're using a bait and switch. Okay, they're using federal forms to bait you, telling you it's the law, you have to do it. We're the federal government, we're bigger than you, you're supposed to do this. And then when they want to take your money, they switch to a non-federal form because they're not even allowed to force you to pay. Okay, so they don't have jurisdiction, and you can go into the tax court and you can file a petition in the tax court to get some of that money back. And the IRS commissioner will send a letter saying that we never asked you to pay anything. We didn't ask, we didn't send you anything in the mail, even if they did. And even if it's got their symbol on it, and even if it's got their name on it, the commissioner of the IRS will say, we didn't send you anything, and then the tax court will dismiss the case. Because the IRS, in his constitutional capacity, can't send you anything. The tax court is a constitutionally enacted tax court under Article 1, where it says that they can enact courts as necessary. So it's a constitutional court. So the IRS, in its constitutional capacity, and establishes a constitutional court, sends you unconstitutional papers to confiscate your income. And then when you go to the tax court to petition to have them stop, they say no, because the constitutional IRS didn't send you anything. It was the unconstitutional IRS under the business revenue generating titles that have not been acted into positive law that require you to sign and make it a contract. They're the ones that have sent you these papers and confiscated your money. And another way they do it is that under the the Money and Finance Title 31, which is enacted into positive law, they use the requirement to have your federal benefits and checks directly deposited into the bank. They use that to then confiscate whatever income you get directly deposited, because your direct deposits come under a positive law title, and as government benefits, they can confiscate that money. And so that's how they're taking money from people who have Social Security, because they require you to use that, to have that check directly deposited into the bank. And because you do that and it's a federal benefit, then they can take it. So if they decide that they don't want to pay you, they'll just take it. And Title 31, Money and Finance, which is enacted into positive law and has an enacting clause, allows them to do that. So that's just some stuff to think about. Enacting clauses, positive law citation, go to the OLRC website, look down through here and look at all the titles that have no enacting clause and no positive law citation. They're not laws, they're just offers to contract with you. And these are the terms of the contract. So what I do is when they send me something that that they want me to sign, I don't sign it. I write no contract on it and send it back, and they can't do anything. But if you don't say something, then they do it anyway, and they just take from you. So just to help you understand a little bit of this stuff and get you started on doing your own research and looking at things from this perspective, and having this knowledge is helpful, and it's helpful to a lot of people. So if you could, even if you don't like my videos, that's fine. If you could share them, because there's a lot of people trying to figure this stuff out right now, and they don't know where to go, and we don't really have a court system that we can understand. So when you are suing one of these agencies that are using these non-positive law citations or non-positive law titles without a enacting clause, I believe you would have to go into the business side of the district court to file your suit. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. I haven't done anything like that yet, so it'd be a trial and error for anybody who wants to try it. So there you have it. Share the videos, because there are people who are fighting the system, and they're in court and they have no idea what's being done to them, and this video might actually help somebody get their children back or the money back that they need to live. So yeah, there you have it. Share away. Now you're smarter.